Hi,
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am great. I'm Lydia. How are you? Okay. I
Sorry
thought
we're a
maybe
bit
I'm too.
late. We had a Palo Youth Council meeting today, and so our wires kind of got messed up, and we yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Hi, thank you so much for coming, everyone. Sorry about the confusion.
No worries.
Okay, so we do have 12 minutes before it starts. So could we quickly go around and do like some audio checks if everyone just wants to unmute and say their full name and then what title you want us to refer to you with. So that can either be like council member or Miss, Mr., anything you want. Stephen, would you like to start?
Testing 1, 2, 3, and you can just call me Steven. That's fine.
Hi, Ajit Varma. You can call me Ajit.
Hi, I'm Pat Burton. You can call me Pat.
Lydia Coo. You can call me Lydia.
Ed Lauling, just Ed is fine.
Raven Malone. You can just call me Raven.
Is this where I make the Bugs Bunny joke about calling you George? Anyway, I'm Carrie. Test.
Everyone, my name is Greer Stone. You can call me Greer.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think, are we still waiting on someone?
Yeah, we're missing two.
Looks like Greg's missing.
Oh, yeah. I think he was waiting on the link.
And Rebecca, maybe?
I'm sorry, who's waiting on a link?
Oh, Greg emailed and said he was on the link, but
I just emailed him back. We should be good.
Okay. Okay, great.
And we only have 10 minutes. So we'll give them another minute to get here, and if not, we'll start going over the structure. I know you all signed a candidate agreement, so you're probably aware of all this stuff. We just wanted to review it one more time so everybody's on the same page, and then we can get started. But thank you all so much for taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it.
Hi, Councilmember Coo.
Hi, Divya. It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I miss all of you.
I know, we miss you too. Right now we have no city council member at our meetings, so hopefully we'll get you soon.
Sorry.
Can everyone see the timer that's up? Yeah, awesome. Okay, I think we'll start going over the structure of the forum, and hopefully Greg and Rebecca sign on soon. So as you all know, the main structure of this forum is we will be splitting you into 2 groups of 5 for the majority of the questions. So we will have there are going to be 5 total questions in your groups of 5. There'll be 3 questions in those groups of 5, and then we're going to do a little break, and we'll have 3 lightning round questions, 1 question that everyone answers, and then 2 more questions in those groups of 5 to break it up. The reason we decided to split into groups of 5 was to avoid repetition, although the questions are kind of paired, so you're answering on similar topics so people can hear your opinions on them, but there are a couple, like the specificity of each question is a little bit different. Every full-length question you will have 1 minute to respond to. You can see the timer up there. We do ask that you respect this 1 minute. If you go over this time, either Antonia and I will politely interrupt you and remind you that your time is up, and that you will have a chance to answer again at the next question. For lightning round questions, we ask that you respond with 1 word or 1 phrase, so probably under 20 or 30 seconds. And yeah, I guess one other thing is that I know that tech can be weird for people, so if you do get dropped from the call, just try and rejoin. If we're still on the same question that you were trying to answer when you got dropped, we'll give you a chance to answer that question. But if we've moved on to other questions, unfortunately, we're not going to go back because we need to keep moving. Does that work for everybody? Awesome. All right. Well, I think we're just missing. Oh, he just emailed me and says that it's still. One sec.
Is there a backup phone number if somebody needs to call to get through?
Emily?
Sorry, I have all these tabs everywhere. I think so. I have to double check the webinar info and then I can drop it into the chat.
I guess before we get started, does anyone have any questions?
Rachel, I actually don't have a question, but I have to drop off by 7. I have another meeting to attend policy and services for the city. So I'll be kind of dropping off around 2 minutes or 3 before 7.
Okay, no worries.
Thank
you.
you.
For reminding me that.
So I just checked and unfortunately there's not a phone number for the Zoom webinar. So just try to rejoin, and then if it doesn't, you can either email Rachel and I can resend the link again to you. And Rachel, I just sent the link again to Greg Tanaka. So hopefully it works for him. If not, I can try to send it again. And Antonia, do you have the custom streaming information?
Yes, I will send that to you.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Basically, I think Cody said just put it in as soon as we start. But then if you put it in now, it'll start streaming now.
Yeah. So just right at 6 when we're about to start, enter in the info. You'll want to click broadcast or more, and then click custom RTMP or custom live streaming service, whatever your Zoom version says. Enter in the stream key URL and then the event link that Antonia has provided for you, and you should be all set.
Okay, Emily, I just forwarded it to your email.
And Miss Eisenberg and Mr. Tanaka, would you guys mind doing a sound check, just saying the name you prefer us to use and just make sure your sound is working?
Only if you call me Rebecca.
Okay.
Greg.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
So Antonia, did you want us to have Rachel's email?
I can
yeah.
Both our emails in the chat right now, so you have them.
Okay.
And another thing is that in the interest of time, we will not be repeating the questions prior to every response. We're going to try and have Emily put them in the chat, so you should be able to see them. But if you need any clarification, just ask. We'd be happy to repeat them. We're just going to not do it every time so we can get through things faster. I also just want to check in and make sure everyone's good with being recorded. I know you all agreed to that on the candidate agreement, but yeah. Okay. All right, well, we got 3 minutes. How is everybody's campaigns going?
I think we're all glad that we're in the final stretch. How's yours? How's yours, Rachel? The Vote 16 campaign going?
Going well. We're still aiming for 2022, so we're doing stuff like this, civic engagement stuff in 2020, which has been good. Yeah.
Good. Keep up the good work.
I think that Steven's yawning is good representation of how our campaigns are going.
I think, is this our last town hall?
Yeah, this is our last candidate forum.
Stephen, you got 3 minutes to get a coffee. Hurry.
Cody, I actually just checked, and I don't think I can stream using, I don't think I can live stream with the YouTube and the Facebook at the same time.
Oh, you would not be going to the Facebook. You'd be going custom RTMP. Wait, do you want it to stream to Facebook? Because you can quickly give me the information and I can add that so it streams to both right now.
Okay, I don't know how to give you the Facebook information or just going through the Vote 16 Paul 2 Facebook page, which is connected to Antonio's Facebook account.
Okay, I don't know. I think YouTube is what has been advertised, at least for
Okay.
mine. So I think, I'm not sure about you, Antonio, but prioritizing that perhaps.
Yeah, just
If you
YouTube
wanna
is
give
fine.
your Facebook info, I can add it real quickly so it streams to both. But
Okay, I'll text you.
okay. Wait, can you actually just message me in chat so I can copy and paste? Oh wait, since you're streaming, I can't do it anymore. My bad. Also, whoever is streaming, hide non-video participants. That'd be good.
Okay, for some reason it's not letting me use your custom links. It says that the video has been it's weird.
Huh. Can you, whoever is streaming, it is currently
Okay,
streaming.
for some reason it's not letting me use your it's not letting me use the custom
It's
streaming link either.
Oh, that's because you stopped the broadcast and it just
Were you
did
sexually
everything.
abused by a Boy Scout?
That's what I was talking about by you like starting it. You can't stop it because right now it just started the video.
Right, I think
It doesn't even let me go to the setup page for some reason on Zoom. It just directs me to a video unavailable thing. Cody, if I make you a co-host, or would you be able to try to see if you can do it off of your end?
Maybe I think I have to actually be the host to do it. Right now it's showing we have a signal, but it's not going to the link that we've publicized. So I'll have to redo all of that. Yeah.
Okay.
This is what
It just says it's live right now, and I'm not really sure what it's streaming on.
It is streaming on YouTube to the InFocus YouTube, but it is not going to the Vote 16 video because you ended that stream.
Oh, so I needed to have that open.
Huh? No, you ended the original stream that we had publicized on all the social media channels. And then you restarted as a new video, is what you did. So now it's live streaming to something called Livestream InFocus News, the eyes and ears of Palo Alto High, instead of Vote 16 Youth Candidate Forum. So change that real quick.
Could you guys text about this, Emily? Can we start the forum?
Yeah, I'm just not sure. Cody, is it just live streaming right now? And also, I don't think I have your phone number.
It is live streaming right now.
Oh, okay, awesome. Then that's great. I'm gonna start the webinar.
Welcome, everyone. We're going to give everybody a couple minutes to come on in, and then we'll get started. Thank you all so much for coming. All right, we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your day to attend our Youth Candidate Forum and to learn more about the candidates on your local ballot. This forum is being hosted by Vote 16 Palo Alto. Vote 16 is a student-led organization looking to lower the voting age to 16 for Palo Alto municipal elections in 2022, but is also very focused on civic engagement in the community. My name is Rachel. I'm a senior at Palo Alto High School, the president of Vote 16 Palo Alto, and one of your moderators for tonight's forum.
My name is Antonia. I'm also a senior at Palo Alto High School, and I'm the vice president of Vote 16, and I'll be your other moderator for tonight.
Before we start, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to all of our 16 wonderful co-sponsors. All of these are student-led organizations, from student publications to social justice clubs to civic engagement organizations. And all of them are working in Palo Alto to amplify the voices of youth and issues that matter. And we'd like to thank them all so much for sponsoring this forum with us.
So as a quick overview of the next hour and a half, the structure of our forum will split the 10 candidates into 2 groups of 5, with each group being asked 5 questions in total. And each candidate will receive 1 minute to respond to each question. We will also have 3 lightning round questions and 1 singular question asked to all 10 candidates. So before we hear from our candidates, we'd like to pass it over to Divya Ganesan, who is a senior at Castaneda School in Palo Alto. She is the co-founder of Real Talk, a nonprofit that empowers youth to engage in political discussion with empathy, curiosity, and respect. In her local community, she has served as the president of Palo Alto Youth Council, where she led a #2020Ready youth political engagement campaign in partnership with the City Council. Divya is a passionate advocate for youth civic engagement and a firm believer in the power of uncomfortable conversations to create tangible change. Divya, take it away.
Thanks, Antonia. I want you all to imagine for a second that you're a fly. It is the vice presidential debate, and you buzz over and you land on top of Vice President Mike Pence's head, and you're home for about the next 20 minutes. What would you hear? You'd probably hear the candidates talking about national COVID-19 regulation, foreign policy, taxes, climate change, all topics you and I care about. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I feel like a fly when I look at national politics. I hear, I listen, but in the end, I feel distance from the very issues we're talking about. I can smell the smoke from the wildfires, but not see the fires myself. There's a pandemic that makes you and me stay home from school, but I'm not sick myself. There's a presidential election that is being called the most important of our time, but I'm not sure how these results will directly impact our everyday lives. So in a world where so much seems out of our control, how do we take action? The answer to this is civic engagement, and more importantly, local civic engagement, which is why you're all here today. These are the decisions you feel every day. The new bike path that allows you to safely travel to get boba, the energy regulations that change the air you breathe, the COVID policies that determine whether or not you get to go to school in person. As president of the Palo Alto Youth Council, I saw these tangible changes being made. We surveyed the teen community, presented to City Council, showed up for open comments in meetings. We shared a youth perspective on anti-vaping legislation, plans for the Cub Release Center, and even our own experiences with transportation and traffic to school. Here's the bottom line. We are not flies. We do not simply wait and listen. We are young advocates, organizers, engaged citizens, and informed voters. We are more collaborative, savvy, and motivated to create a better future, because you know what? It's our future. You all chose to be here at the Vote 16 Forum, so I don't have to tell you that our vote matters. But I do want to say that our engagement doesn't end on November 3rd. It doesn't just remain in the White House. Building a better Palo Alto happens right here at City Hall, or I guess now on Zoom. And our duty as citizens and maybe future leaders is something we do every day, including today. So I'm excited to pass it back to Vote 16 and our local candidates to hear their vision for a better Palo Alto. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Divya, for all the work you're doing in Palo Alto and for taking the time to speak with all of us. Now we'd like to give the candidates 30 seconds each to introduce themselves and their campaigns.
We're going to start off with Stephen Lee, followed by Rebecca Eisenberg, then Ed Lauling and Raven Malone. Stephen, take it away.
Good evening, Palo Alto. My name is Stephen Lee. I'm a progressive Democrat running for Palo Alto City Council. I'm one of 3 candidates endorsed by the County Democratic Party. And for the past 3 years, I've had the honor and privilege of serving as your Palo Alto Human Relations Commissioner, working to make our community more welcoming, inclusive, and responsive to the needs of all members of our community, including our youth population. I've worked to increase youth mental health funding in our public schools, and I've worked with teachers, students, and health professionals to get teen vaping on our city's agenda. I'm running because I believe it's time for bold, progressive, and responsive leadership. I've been in local government for over 17 years, including starting as a young person serving on the San Jose Youth Advisory Council, building West San Jose's first teen center. I look forward to working with the young people in our community on all of the issues that matter the most to us, including housing, climate change, maintaining and bringing back vital community services that are important to the young people in our community. I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen. Next up is Rebecca.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Rebecca. I've been an attorney for 30 years. I have degrees from Stanford University and Harvard Law School. You may know either or both of my 2 high school age kids. Both attended Green Middle School. Elon Smoller Eisenberg is a senior at Kahila, and Ari Smoller Eisenberg is a freshman at Palo. He likes to play baseball. I get that young people are very capable and they are deserving of more rights. I trust young people to run my campaign. Everyone on the leadership of my campaign is under age 30. I support Vote 16. I had a great interview with y'all and I lobbied at it vehemently at City Council meetings. If I were on City Council, it would have been on the ballot this November. I am endorsed by all the labor unions and by Judge Ladoris Cordell. I'm very grateful to be here. I'm excited to hear from you and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Next up is Ed, followed by Raven Malone.
Yes, hi. My campaign is being run by my son, 32 years old. Second in command is my son, 27 years old. So it's not about age, it's about capabilities. I've served on the, I've done a lot of community service in Palo Alto and served on commissions recently. I don't have to go into all of that. I'm just really motivated to help people, and that's why I'm, in this game, and that's why I'm running for council. There's just so many things to get done, and whether it's fixing the dog parks or making more playing fields or making sure that we're never cutting any funds for teen safety programs. That's what I'm about. So I'm experienced, I'm prepared, I'm battle tested, and I'm eager to listen to you tonight.
Thank you so much, Ed. Next up is Raven Malone, followed by Ajit Varma.
Hi, my name is Raven Malone. I'm an electrical engineer, a dog lover, a self-proclaimed tea connoisseur, and an art enthusiast. I was born and raised in Alabama. I have an undergrad and master's degree in electrical engineering, and I've been an engineer for the past 8 years. I believe that my ability to collaborate that I've learned while being an engineer will serve me well on council, and I decided to run for city council because of the residents who felt unheard, and this includes our seniors, our essential workers, and our youth, and I want to bring your voices to the table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raven. Next up is Ajit Varmo, followed by Lydia Coo.
Thank you. First off, I want to say I'm super impressed with everyone who's speaking on this forum, and thank you for making this happen and your involvement. So my name is Ajit Varma. I grew up in Austin, Texas, moved out to Palo Alto after I graduated from college at 19. And the reason I moved out here was because of all the opportunities that are in Palo Alto. So I want to make sure that we have all these opportunities for all the future generations. And so I think everyone here, all the high school students, I think that they do have a voice, and I think their opinion matters. And I want to make sure that we preserve the future for them here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajit. Next up is Lydia Coo, followed by Carrie Templeton.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Lydia Coo, and I'm running for re-election to City Council. I started as an organizer for the Safety and Emergency Preparedness Program and in my neighborhood, and also volunteered with the PTA and was a volleyball coach at Fletcher Middle School when my children was there, and even after they moved on to Gunn High School. How I got involved in city government is that over and over, I saw how much expertise and energy residents have to offer and how hard it was for them to get City Hall to utilize it. So I want to remind that residents are the heart and soul of the community. So in my term, last 4 years and moving forward, my top priority is to ensure that residents' views are represented and then policies are not made that will deteriorate the quality of life and further burden the residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Next up is Carrie Templeton, followed by Pat Burt.
Hi, my name is Carrie Templeton, and I'm running to make the promise of Palo Alto available to everyone in our community. I want to listen to new ideas, reach out to those who have been underrepresented in the past, and include those who've been ignored for too long. I bring my leadership experience as a parent, as a high-tech program manager, and now as chair of the Planning and Transportation Commission to be a voice for the entire community. I should share that I'm endorsed by the Daily Post, Mercury News, Verde Magazine, Democratic Party, Silicon Valley High School Democrats, and the League of Conservation Voters, and environmental activists, including Justine Burt. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Next up is Pat Burt, followed by Greer Stone.
Hi, I'm Pat Burt. I grew up in this area, and our two kids, Carolyn and Riley, went to Hayes and Green and Pally. And I'm running because I have always believed in the importance of local government, not only because it provides all the services that are so important to us, and that in this crisis, we're now realizing how important they are when we often tend to take them for granted, but it's also where we have the greatest attachment to citizen democracy and really an ability to be engaged. I'm very engaged as a state delegate to the Democratic Convention and have been very involved in national campaigns, but local government is what really touches us most directly. And I look forward to talking with you about it.
Thank you so much, Pat. Next up is Greer Stone, followed by Greg Tanaka.
Thanks, Rachel. Good evening, and thank you to Vote 16 and the other youth-led organizations who organized tonight's forum. As some of you may know, I'm the Student Activities Director at Pally, and I teach U.S. history at Gunn. I've attended school at Duveneck, Green, and Pally, and I'm really particularly excited about tonight's forum because it's all of you, our community's youth, that really has always inspired me to do the work that I do. Being a voice for our youth inspired me to join the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission when I was 23 years old. I went on to chair that commission. It what inspired me to switch careers from being an attorney to being a teacher. And it's one of the reasons why I'm running for council, to help bring your voice to city government. I'm endorsed by the Palo Alto Weekly, the San Jose Mercury News, the Sierra Club, Senator Jerry Hill, and many more elected leaders and community members. I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much, Greer. Next up is Greg Tanaka.
Yeah, I want to thank the organizers, Vote 16, all the student organizations. It's amazing that you guys are doing this. Really impressed. I have a daughter right now at Green and a son at Poly. So I guess you're a classmate. I started as president of my neighborhood association here in College Terrace. Then I was chair of the Planning and Transportation Commission. I'm now currently chair on the Finance Committee on the City Council. There I fought for small business grants and also the street closures to allow the restaurants to reopen. I've also been fighting for school funding and for the shuttles for the kids, and also for a anti-vaping ordinance. So thank you for you guys' help on that. I'm kind of famous for my office hours every Sunday, which I know a lot of the members of the Vote 16 have participated many times. So thank you for that. And I'm running to really fight for working families to make sure that you guys have a voice. One of the current projects I'm working on is trying to get the Greer Park skate park going. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you so much to all of our candidates who've taken time out of their day to come be with us here today and talk about the issues. So without further ado, we would like to jump into questions. To respect everyone's time, we will not be repeating the questions before each candidate answers. However, questions will be posted in the chat. We've split the candidates, as Antonia mentioned before, into two groups. And so the first question will be directed toward Group A, which includes Pat Burt, Stephen Lee, Carrie Templeton, Rebecca Eisenberg, and Greg Tanaka. Antonia?
Thank you so much, Rachel. The City Council and School Board are the two main governing bodies in Palo Alto, both of which directly affect the lives of youth. In which areas do you believe the City Council and School Board need to collaborate, and how will you work to achieve those goals? Carrie will have the chance to answer first, followed in order by Pat Burt, Greg Tanaka, Rebecca Eisenberg, and then Stephen Lee. Thank you so much.
All right, great question, and thank you so much for asking it. I would like to see the school board and city council collaborate on the police reform. I think that is probably an area that does affect our youth, especially when they're off campus. So I'd like to see us start there and make sure that we understand the issues that our youth are facing with our public safety. And that goes beyond just policing. We also need to think about the mental health needs and make sure that the services that are needed are available. And I understand the school board is working on that, but I think also the city council has a role to play in understanding what else could be needed that's outside the scope of the school board and advocate strongly for that, either within the city or within the county. Beyond that, I think also making sure that the transportation aspects of what the youth need are considered when we evaluate our transportation needs, and make sure that we have student representatives on transportation related panels so that we can hear their perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Next up is Pat Burt, followed by Greg Tanaka and Rebecca Eisenberg.
Yes, well, one of the main areas that we've had a strong collaboration on for now 10 years is Project Safety Net. And I was mayor when we initiated that program. My wife has been active in it throughout. And it's a very important and underutilized collaboration that really helps further not just the immediate mental health issues, but the broader needs of teens. We also have in this crisis a number of emerging needs. First, our city council elected to initially, and our staff proposed to slash and eliminate all funding for teen programs in the middle of this crisis, as teens are having a year of their lives taken away. I fought for returning most of that, but not all of that has been done. And climate change is something that is extremely important in the youth, and the Sunrise Movement is not only the most important new movement on climate change globally, but it's something that the school district and the city can collaborate with the youth on and empower them.
Thank you so much. Next up is Greg Tanaka, followed by Rebecca Eisenberg and Stephen Lee.
So I currently serve on the school liaison city council committee. So we meet every month, we talk about school issues. I believe it's really important to have a close partnership with our school district. A lot of families move here to Palo Alto for schools, as did my family. During the tough budget cuts we had during the summertime or early summertime, I was the only one to stand up against the budget cuts in terms of cutting $2 million, $3 million from Coverly, the Coverly transfer that helps fund our school. Also, I voted against the cutting the crosstown shuttles, because also it actually goes in front of Green, where I see a lot of my daughter's classmates take that to get home and go to school. I also try to make sure that we have good crossing guards, that we have crossing guards for when kids are going back to school. And the other thing that's really important for the cities to do is bike safety. So a lot of kids bike to school, and so we need to make sure it's safe. The last part is making sure that we have school resource officers. So a lot of close collaboration needed with our school district.
Thank you so much. Rebecca, take it away.
Thank you. So the city and the school board have no choice but to collaborate when it comes to Coverly Community Center, because the school district owns most of it and the city owns just a little bit of it. Meanwhile, the school district and the community, we all need housing, and the school district especially needs teacher housing. Unfortunately, the school district can't build legally teacher housing because that's not allowed under their bonds, but the city can. I've already discussed with a number of school board members the option of creating an agreement between the city and the school board that will give the schools funding and will give teachers housing and will provide additional housing for the city. Easy peasy. If teachers have housing, they'll have more time to spend with you, the students. They'll have less time commuting, which harms the environment, and it would help the environment. Additionally, we must collaborate on childcare, mental health services, and COVID testing. Together, we can do a ton, and we must. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stephen?
Yeah, I believe our city council and our school district have a shared responsibility on so many issues, including on youth mental health and teen vaping. And these are two issues that I have led on as a Palo Alto Human Relations Commissioner, even though it wasn't very popular and I got a lot of pushback from our current city council on both of these issues. I believe we need to double down on safe routes to schools. I held a town hall with 40 different high school students who don't feel safe enough biking around our town. We need to improve our bike infrastructure so that youth and people of all ages feel safe biking around. We need to get serious about building additional teacher housing so that teachers can actually live in and close to the communities that they teach instead of spending their time commuting back and forth. I believe that young people should have a seat at the table. You, as young people, have a vested interest in all of the issues we care about and all the issues we address as a city, whether it's climate change or housing. And so I want to make sure that you get the vote in both school board and city elections, and that you have a seat at the table at all of the commissions and committee hearings that we have as a city. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Our next question will be directed toward Group B, which consists of Raven Malone, Greer Stone, Ajit Varma, Lydia Coo, and Ed Lauling. This question is, school closures and the economic recession that followed in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic have resulted in job loss and hard times for many Palo Alto families. If elected, what will you do to support these families with respect to housing, financial aid, and childcare? First up is Raven Malone, followed by Greer Stone.
So I've spoken to many parents actually who've told me their frustrations when it comes to the lack of childcare. Don't get me wrong, there is a program currently for childcare. It's just limited to the amount of people who need childcare. So we need more resources as far as the students who are having a hard time trying to study at home, because we have to keep in mind, especially now, there are kids who are at home trying to learn with the teacher virtually, but basically by themselves, while their parents are also trying to keep up with work. And this leads to a stressful situation, not to mention parents who have lost their jobs, families who are unhoused, who are in RVs where they don't have proper access to internet. There's a lot that we have to take into account. So it's really important that we provide resources to these kids, to these families, so that they're not feeling the pressure of not only COVID, but also trying to keep up with their day-to-day while experiencing the change of working from home and schooling from home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raven. Next up is Greer Stone, followed by Ajit Varma.
Great question. And fortunately, I mean, the plan is by January 7th that the middle schools and high schools will have opened up. And at that point, all students should be back on campus. And my hopes is that will relieve some of these burdens, but we never know. Epidemiologists are predicting that January is going to be one of the worst months for the pandemic. And so we need to be prepared either way when we take office. You know, school really is a safe place for a lot of students. Not only is it a place where they have equitable access to technology and resources and lunch, but also a place where many students, unfortunately, can escape the realities of their difficult home lives. I really think the city and the school here can be partnering up to be providing safe spaces for students that need to be able to access that, study, kind of like study rooms as well, providing internet hotspots for those students who don't have a good internet connection at home, and fixing up temporary shelters for those families who are struggling to be able to get by through this crisis, in order to make sure that we're able to keep these families in Palo Alto and weather this storm.
Thank you so much, Greer. Next up is Ajit Varmo, followed by Lydia Coo.
So we definitely need to help families as much as we can. It's already very difficult for many families at different income levels to afford to live in Palo Alto. So things like where you lose your job and you're no longer able to afford rent, I think we need to provide the laws in place so that things like evictions are postponed, things like resources are provided until things get better. And it's not going to be quick. So we really need to think of like, what are the resources that we can use from like state money and federal money to really make sure that people are aware of the resources that they have available to them. There's obviously like a lot of loans for businesses. In return, the businesses shouldn't be laying off their employees. So I think it's a lot of connecting a lot of the federal dollars. in terms of financial aid. For childcare, this has affected me personally. Like I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and when the pandemic first started, all the schools were closed. And now luckily they're open, but they're very expensive. So I think it's important for us to find resources that are both safe and accessible to everybody in our community. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ajit. Next up is Lydia Coo, followed by Ed Lauling.
Yes. So when the pandemic hit, the city council and staff did get together and started working on ensuring that there is donations and funding. And the funding had come into under the Palo Alto Community Foundation. And through their applications are taken in order to help in different ways, whether it's for food or for paying electric bills or for just everyday needs. Then there is also what is called the CDBG funding that actually helps very low income residents here in Palo Alto in order to help pay their rents should they not be able to. Now with financial aid, we do have people that is above the poverty level and they cannot qualify for a lot of the federal funds. So I am trying to speak with some of our county representatives as well as with some of our state legislators in order to see if they can lobby for money coming in from the federal level. That's still in the works. With childcare, okay, sorry, the timer. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Next up is Ed Lauling.
Yes, thank you. One other thing that the city has done that's kind of low hanging fruit, but I'm glad they did it, was to delay utility payments for those people that just couldn't afford them. So that was a nice break. Other things have been mentioned. I do think the emphasis here is that we have to work with outside partners, both nonprofits and government, because perhaps we should have been, but we weren't entirely prepared to take on a whole town in terms of the massive needs that are here. So right now we have to do, as I did when we worked with the homeless, we had outside services that we worked with to try to help folks get the services that they needed. And someone mentioned here, I think it was Lydia, government grants, and both of those I think can be very effective, and we should be doubling down on that. I talked to Todd Collins and asked him, what should we do? And he said the best thing that you could do as a city is find ways for teams to engage safely because they miss each other and they miss the contact. So that's another thing I think we should have done a lot more of. Time's up.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Thank you, Rachel. Our next question for Group A is, what are your plans for creating more affordable housing in Palo Alto, and do you support ending single-family only zoning? Why or why not? And how will you measure the success of your affordable housing policies and adapt to ensure all Palo Altans have access to housing? First up, we have Pat Burt, followed by Greg Tanaka, Rebecca Eisenberg, and Stephen Lee.
So first, my plans for more affordable housing are focused on both the funding side and the incentives and locations that we can have them. I supported a increase in the what are called the impact fees for new office development, which the council then reversed in 2017. And those fees are also the fees that the county uses against Stanford's development. So we lost double those fees. And that was about half of our affordable housing funding that we would have had. With Greer and Stephen, I led a campaign to have a business tax that would be focused on transportation and affordable housing that would have been able to triple our affordable housing funding. And unfortunately, we had a majority of the council who was not supportive of any significant business tax on that. That's one of the most important areas that we need to go forward with. And on the zoning, we have to have a combination of incentives. I'd say on the single family zoning, we've already essentially eliminated. We have 2 ADUs that are now allowed for every single family lot in Palo Alto.
Thank you so much, Pat. Next up is Greg Tanaka, followed by Rebecca Eisenberg, Stephen Lee, and Carrie Templeton.
So I think affordable housing is a really important topic in our city. It's very, very expensive to live here, from our housing to our utility bills to our food. One of the best ways of solving this problem is actually ADUs. So on the last council meeting, I helped push forward ordinances that will allow us to build ADUs easier than before. And so every single family lot can actually build additional ADUs. And one thing that will really benefit, and it's something that we're looking at to do further, is to actually allow underground ADUs. So basically being able to build basements or be able to park your car underneath ADUs, which will relieve the parking pressures on streets, as well as provide more housing without the visual impact. The other part of solving this problem is actually smaller units. So smaller units are naturally more affordable. They cost less to build. They need less land. You can put them near transit. And this is beneficial because this provides truly affordable housing without the need for government subsidies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. Next up is Rebecca Eisenberg.
So affordable housing has 3 Ps. First is production, second is preservation of our existing affordable housing, and third is protection. I'm going to start with protection because the vast majority of Palo Alto School District students are renters, like me. Renters have been facing very hard times in the pandemic. We right now have a moratorium on evictions, but that moratorium runs out on February 2nd. Right now, Palo Alto has no rent control when it comes to pricing. So it's likely that a lot of Palo Alto families and school district families are in danger of losing their homes. We need to institute protections for tenants immediately. And for those who end up losing their homes, we need to have emergency shelter in place. Right now, Palo Alto has 0 shelter beds for homeless people, 0. And I promise I will change that. The state of California has already given away $1 billion to other cities, and other cities have applied for that money, like Mountain View. Palo Alto hasn't applied. I'll make sure we do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Next up is Stephen Lee.
Yeah, I absolutely think we need to get rid of exclusionary zoning. I think most of the young people on this call realize that exclusionary zoning is a successor to redlining and other overt forms of zoning discrimination. We need to enable the construction of duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, and we can do it in a way that blends quite well into our existing single-family neighborhoods. We need to enable dense housing along transit and in job centers like the Research Park by reevaluating height limits and parking requirements. I also think we need to build teacher housing at Coverly on top of the community center there. I co-wrote an op-ed to that effect with Gail Price, who not only served on our school board, but on our city council. And she's the mother of a teacher who worked in the district as well. I agree with Pat Burt. I believe we do need to put a business tax on the ballot, ask larger profitable corporations to step up and pay their fair share. We could generate between $10 and $50 million a year, which we could use to invest in housing and restore a lot of the community services that young people depend on, but which we'll cut during this last budget round. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And to wrap us up, Carrie.
Thank you very much. Affordable housing has a lot of aspects that you've already heard about. I want to focus on making it easier for projects to get approved. The current approval cycle is very long and involved and involves multiple meetings with the city in front of the architecture board, the history board, the planning PTC commission, and then eventually in front of the council. And so sometimes that makes it difficult to get your project approved and also more costly. So we are seeing fewer of those. I think if we can find ways to streamline that process and make sure that we have clear guidelines before the project comes to any of those boards, we're going to see more projects coming to us. Regarding single family zoning, I agree that with ADUs and JADUs, single family zoning is essentially already gone. But those are restrictive into how you can configure the additional homes. So I think we can allow duplexes as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
Thank you all so much. We now want to move on to asking a question of Group B. This question is, while small businesses in Palo Alto serve as the foundation of our community, they also serve to employ many high school age students. What actions do you believe the City Council must take to support these local businesses through the pandemic and to protect their workers? Greer Stone will be responding first, followed by Ajit Varma, Lydia Coo, Ed Lauling, and then Raven Malone.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the question, Rachel. And you're right, a lot of small businesses and retail have our youth serving in it. I always love going into Teaspoon in Midtown because I have several students from both Gunn and from Gunn that have worked there. But our small businesses are really struggling. right now. And our retail has for the last several years have been struggling. It's not just because we've entered this pandemic, though this has really accelerated. There's two things that I really want to focus on. One, the city of Palo Alto should hire an economic development manager. Most cities in the region have somebody in this position, and this person's job and their training and their experience is basically to be able to determine what type of businesses go into what areas of the commercial core that's going to make it a shopping destination. So like kind of balancing big box shops and small retail, mom and pop shops, restaurants, theaters, et cetera, to really make it a shopping experience. And that'll incentivize people to come and spend their tax dollars in those areas. Finally, we need to make sure we're preserving our ground floor retail protection ordinance that is intended to make sure that ground floor retail is not being replaced by office space. The current council is thinking about removing that. I would never remove that, especially right now.
Okay, thank you so much, Greer. Next up is Ajit Varmo, followed by Lydia Coo.
So a lot of my platform has been on how do we help businesses of all sizes, small businesses especially. And I think that there's a lot of things that we can do in the short term, as well as making sure we make the right decisions for the long term. So in the short term, there's a lot of need for businesses to be outdoors because of this ordinances and the safety it provides people with better social distancing. So things like the closure of University Avenue, the closure of California Avenue, the enablement of things like parklets. I think these are all like critical to help small businesses still continue to run. So that's one thing. There's also a lot of resources that the government provides in terms of like loans that we can facilitate for small businesses as well that I think is critical. Finally, there's been a lot of discussion around enabling business taxes. And I think that business taxes could negatively, of course, impact employers of all sizes and encourage them to leave our city and cost jobs for the people of Palo Alto. So I would definitely not support anything that would get in the way of businesses succeeding in Palo Alto.
Thank you, Ajit. Next up is Lydia Coo, followed by Ed Lauling, and then Raven Malone.
I concur with a lot of what Greer Stone had said in terms of looking at investing into hiring a economics development specialist. He calls it manager, I call it specialist. It's the same thing. The whole point is to take the lessons that we're learning now in terms and also surveying the residents here in town, including all the youth, as to what the community would like to see here in Palo Alto as we come out of the pandemic. And one of the things that I have always advocated for, which we have been missing for many, many years, is what areas youth like to go to. At this point, we used to have a bowling alley here in Palo Alto. That's gone. And so we should be incentivizing and looking at attracting people who wants to provide things for all age groups. Drop-in centers, right now just Mitchell Park, but we need more arcades, hangout places for the youth, part of the community.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Next up is Ed Lauling and Raven Malone.
Yes, thank you. First off, commenting on what Ajit said, business tax is off the table for small retailers. To my knowledge, it's never been on the table, but that's not what the business tax is for. It's to raise substantial funds like Stephen talked about for affordable housing. I think the most important thing, people are touching on this, is to now take a very much of a strategic viewpoint. We can't solve anymore for just the next 60 days. We can still do it, but we have to take a more strategic view. And so that person that folks are talking about, I call him a czar. This person has to be extraordinarily experienced, extraordinarily strategic, taking short-term 5 and 10-year views to kind of revitalize retail. In the meantime, closing it accomplishes nothing. So I'm opposed to that. I'm also opposed to lowering wages, which was suggested by one of the regional developers that spoke at council. We're not going to do that. And also to make sure that there's access to retailers in terms of easy parking and so on. But some will not make it, but others will come back. So I don't think it's ever going to go away, and you'll still be able to get your jobs in those stores.
Thank you so much, Ed. Next up is Raven Malone.
Hi, I think that we need to create a comprehensive marketing plan to bring more business to our small businesses and also to help promote our nonprofits. I think that is great that we have some streets closed because it helps our restaurants, but we also need to help our retail businesses as well. We need to have plans for the winter, for when it's a little chilly sitting outside or walking around outside. And we also need to make it easier for businesses, small businesses, to come here, which means incentives for coming here and having a storefront, as well as incentives for hiring our youth, our high schoolers. I remember when I was in high school, it was very difficult for me to find a job because people wanted me to have experience in order to get experience. So I think that we should also not only have incentives to make it a little cheaper for them to come here and start off for maybe the first year, but also an incentive for hiring our high schoolers to help them get themselves into the job market as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raven.
Thank you. Our next question for Group A is, if you were on council in August, what was or would have been your vote in regards to opening Foothills Park to non-residents? Do you believe the decision should be given to voters in a future election? Order of response will be Greg Tanaka, Rebecca Eisenberg, Stephen Lee, Carrie Templeton, and Pat Burt. Thank you.
So I was on council, so I could tell you what my vote was. So both Lydia and I voted the same. We voted to have this go to the people to decide what should happen to Foothills Park. So Foothills Park, there's a lot of fervor about it, but I think there's a couple of things to remember. One thing is that there's 3 entrances. 2 of them, anyone can go in anytime they feel like it, whether they live in our city or not. You can go to Foothills Park if you're accompanied by a Palo Alto resident. And we voted for a pilot program where essentially we'll test this out and see what kind of impact there are on the environment for this park. So yeah, so that's what happened. And Lydia and I, she made the motion, I seconded it, and we made a few amendments. But that's, yeah. So I think our vote is, there's no mystery there. And I think we were entrusted by the people that live here to take care of it. So I think it's up to them to decide what we should do with it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. Next up is Rebecca Eisenberg.
So, as you know, I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for a long time. I've written about constitutional issues, including on Harvard Law Review, and that was almost 30 years ago, and I've been working on it since then. And I say this as my official opinion, as I told the city council before they made this dreadful, incorrect, legally abhorrent and morally abhorrent decision to A, not to open the park, and B, to let the voters decide, that it is absolutely a violation of the 14th Amendment of our Constitution to allow voters to decide on the civil rights of human beings. So closing Foothill Park to non-residents is a violation of the 14th Amendment for all the reasons said in the extremely articulate complaint that was filed by the NAACP, by the ACLU, and by several well-known accomplished residents, including Judge Ladoris Cordell and Kim Bomar. It violates rights because that exclusion is based on a history of legalized segregation. That segregation remains, and we must open up the park and apologize. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Next up is Stephen Lee.
Our city council's decision on Foothills Park, quite frankly, is a national embarrassment. I agree with our mayor that you don't put civil rights to a recommend opening Foothills Park to non-residents. And if you follow the HRC, you know we rarely agree on anything. So the fact that we agreed unanimously on this is a testament to the fact that we need to do this now. And when you ask environmental groups, all of them are in favor of opening Foothills Park. We have been, this park has been under capacity for decades. And so there is additional capacity to share it. In fact, our Parks and Rec Commission also recommended reopening the park 6-1. And I agree with, Councilmember Allison Cormack, sharing Foothills Park won't make it any less special. For a number of different reasons, this is a decision we need to reverse quickly, and we need to move into 2020 and get serious about addressing past inequities and bad policy in the past. So this was definitely a big mistake on the part of our council.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Next up is Carrie.
Hi, thank you. I would have voted to open it, and I'm concerned about the decision to kick the can down the road to the next council while trying to bind that council to what they're going to do about it, including an option to put it to the voters. Voters sometimes get it wrong. I mean, I'm thinking back to the senior affordable housing proposal for Maybell and how that's now 14 $5 million homes instead of senior affordable housing. So I think it's the time for people that are on council to take their responsibility and their leadership seriously and to open up Foothills Park. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And to wrap us up is Pat Burke.
Yes, so I was one of the community leaders who co-signed the petition in support of the Parks and Rec Commission's proposal to open Foothills Park. My wife and I are up there probably 3 times a week, have been for many decades. It's typically underutilized, and we can leverage our resources to bring in volunteers to help backfill the needs. And so the council didn't need to have this revenue neutral contingency on it. I would also say, though, that the history of Foothills Park was not one of exclusion against neighboring communities other than the ones who were asked to join in and purchase it with us, namely Los Altos and Los Altos Hills. Interestingly, we have Arastradero Park, which is contiguous with Foothill, which is also open to those communities. And Los Altos Hills has just restricted parking all along Arastradero Road for people who have been coming to Foothill, Arastradero Park in the pandemic in greater numbers. So I think we should partner and open it up even greater.
Thank you so much, Pat.
Thank you so much. Our next question is going to be directed toward Group B. And the question is, the National Black Lives Matter movement has highlighted the systemic racism ingrained in our justice and policing systems, and the Palo Alto Police Department is not exempt. Do you support reallocating police funding to other community safety measures, such as trained unarmed response teams, programs for mental health, and programs for domestic violence prevention? If not, what will you do to create a safer Palo Alto for all community members? The order of response will be as follows: Ajit Varma, Lydia Coo, Ed Lauling, Raven Malone, Greer Stone.
So I think that we need to transform the police department. And to me, like, there are areas in the budget that we can better utilize. So there's a talk of building the new police department, which is a $40 million capital expenditure, which I think that could be better utilized other places. I do think that we should devote resources to things like mental health and community organization. I don't think these are mutually exclusive, though, in the sense that, like, you have to, take a job away from a police officer in order to fund the job of a mental health advocate. I think that safety is very important. I've heard a lot of stories of various crime that's happened in Palo Alto where people do feel unsafe in certain neighborhoods. So I think that it's not like a one size fits all solution where you hear a lot of calls that this is like the only solution to a problem. But I think that police actually need to be trained, and taking away money that prevents them from training, I don't think works. There are a lot of reforms that need to be made in terms of like the contract with the police and the way that people deal with people who have done bad things on the police force, for sure. But I look at that as like a transformation and improvements that need to be made rather than removing funding.
Thank you so much, Ajit. Next up is Lydia Coo, followed by Ed Lauling.
Thank you, Mr. Varma. That was actually very, very correct, that there's better ways than to defund or to reallocate the police funding. Well, we do have a high-performing police department, and there are some that may have overstepped, and we're addressing that. There is reforms that's necessary. There are issues in our community in terms of mental health that we do want to look at, and we are examining it right now as a council to see if we can incorporate other programs, such as the one that is called Cahoots, that is out of Oregon. The other thing is also, it's not just in our police, there's many different departments in our government and in many areas that do need addressing. Budgets have a way of segregation and also have a way of oppressing, but also it has to start at your dinner table, at our dinner table within the community.
Thank you, Lydia. Next up is Ed Lauling, followed by Raven Malone.
Yes, in answer to your direct question, I'll give you a direct answer. I do think that there are a number of positions that don't have to be uniform sworn officers, and the areas that you suggested are the exact correct ones. Mental health, drug addiction, things along those lines. There are professionals that are better trained, and those police could be doing other things like catching speeders, which we cut out of the budget, which was another mistake. There are certain sensitivity trainings. They're getting better. I don't want to make it sound like, yeah, send somebody to a class for a few days and we're fixed. We are not. There's no denying systemic racism, and some of the folks in our police department are that way. Hopefully, a lot of them are not. I think that the biggest lever point is our next round with the unions, because we have to change those rules so that we can prosecute guilty after due process, guilty infractions, and even the chief can't do that today. That has to change in the next round next year.
Thank you so much, Ed. Next up is Raven Malone, followed by Greer Stone.
Thank you. I do think that we need to reimagine community safety. We need to have social services that respond to mental health crises, helping people who are unhoused, as well as helping people with drug addictions or who are suffering overdoses. We also need to use unarmed peace officers for routine traffic stops and for calls to file nonviolent reports, like reports for theft, which has been happening a lot lately. We also need more transparency and accountability for excessive force and racial profiling. There are quite a few police officers who are still currently on our force who, in my opinion, and in a lot of other opinions, I'm sure, shouldn't be there, especially the police officer who was on video abusing someone in the Buena Vista mobile home, as well as the police officer who used a racial slur to a Black police officer. These are unacceptable. These show people of color that they're not welcome here, and we need to fix this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raven. Next up is Greer Stone.
This is an issue that's really important to me, and within my kind of realm of experience. You know, my father was a police officer for over 30 years. I worked in the district attorney's office during law school right here at the Palo Alto courthouse. I worked very closely with a lot of our police officers, took ride-alongs with them, and the vast majority of them are highly trained, very competent, and very good at their job. That being said, law enforcement is not one of those areas where it is okay to have a few bad employees. We need to be able to root those out. You know, my social justice background is really critical here for the reforms I have in mind. I'm the former chair of the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission. I'm the current vice chair of the Santa Clara County Human Rights Commission, and I chair the Justice Review Committee at the county level. And I'm on an ad hoc committee proposing reforms to our Board of Supervisors for police reform for our law enforcement. Lydia mentioned the Kahoot program in Oregon. That's a great way where we, instead of not defunding, it's about reallocating. And so having mental health specialists, psychologists responding to incidents that involve a mental health crisis over a police officer in Eugene, Oregon, where Kahoot's program is, saved that city over $15 million and saw a precipitous drop in police violence there. We can use that here, reallocate that funds for increased training, get the traffic enforcement team back and going. But not every solution is going to involve not having armed police officers. Traffic stops that Raven mentioned, traffic stops is one of the most violent, dangerous parts of a police officer's job, and having unarmed police officers pulling people over would be very dangerous for the community as well as our police department.
Thank you so much, Greer. So now we're going to take a quick break from listening to candidates answer questions in their two separate groups, and we'll be moving into what we like to call a lightning round. And so these questions will be asked of all candidates, and candidates will receive either one word or one phrase to respond to the question. So we're going to try and move through these quickly. Antonia, take it away.
All right, our first question for the lightning round is, in one sentence, state what you believe the current city council needs to improve on. Order of response goes Ed Lauling, Greg Tanaka, Pat Burt, Lydia Coo, Ajit Varma, Greer Stone, Carrie Templeton, Stephen Lee, Rebecca Eisenberg, and Raven Malone.
City council needs to improve the way that they govern.
Should I go next?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So I think the budgeting, we're going through a deep recession, and we're going to have to reallocate our resources carefully. And so we have to make sure we pick and choose what's needed.
The city council needs to reestablish its proper role of setting policies and holding the staff accountable.
Regaining trust and confidence from the public.
Recovery from the impacts of COVID-19 and reopening the city.
Is it me?
Yes.
Okay. I'd say don't just talk the talk, but actually walk the walk when it comes to actually creating affordable housing.
First, COVID recovery, and then stop obstructing housing.
Stephen?
We need a counselor who's going to stand up, take back control from staff, and work for residents.
And Rebecca, then Raven.
Transparency and accountability. We need to give our community a place at the table.
I'll say also finding more sources of revenue for housing and market rate housing, as well as fixing the way that developers are able to come here and build housing.
Thank you so much.
Our next lightning round question will be, do you support the lowering of the voting age to 16 for Palo Alto municipal elections? Please respond with a yes or a no, and then one phrase of explanation. The order of response will be Carrie Templeton, Stephen Lee, Greer Stone, Greg Tanaka, Rebecca Eisenberg, Ajit Varma, Pat Burt, Ed Lauling, and Raven Malone.
Yes, to set the habit of voting early.
Yes, these issues impact young people, and young people have great values and great views on these issues.
Greer?
Yes, this forum is a perfect example of our youth are more than capable of voting on critical issues in our community.
Greg?
Yeah, I was trying to get it actually on the agenda, as you guys know. So we couldn't hear it, but I was trying.
Rebecca?
Absolutely. They deserve to have a voice, and it's the best defense against voter deregistration as well.
Ajit?
Yes, the laws in our city and the policies of city council affect 16. I think 16-year-olds are mature enough to make decisions.
Pat?
I support Prop 18 to lower the primary age to 17. I'm not sure I support lowering general voting to 16.
Thank you. And Ed?
I'm undecided. It's appealing. I just haven't dug in far enough. So at this point, I'd have to say undecided, therefore no.
Okay. Raven?
Yes, I think that the amount of high school interviews that I've done this election proves that you all are paying a lot more attention to what's going on in politics than I ever did in high school. So absolutely.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you. And for our last lightning round question is, what do you do to take care of your own mental health? Please answer in one phrase. Order of response goes Pat Burt, Greer Stone, Ed Lauling, Ajit Varma, Raven Malone, Greg Tanaka, Rebecca Eisenberg, Carrie Templeton, and Stephen Lee.
I go hiking.
Working out and Disney movies.
Ed?
Oh, sorry. Yes, get out in nature.
I do a lot of biking, but I just got a virtual reality headset today that I'm excited to set up as well.
Raven?
I play board games with my friends, or my fiance and I take our dog to the beach.
Greg?
Oh, so I'm the son of a mechanic. My dad never finished high school. So for me, my hobby is fixing my house and fixing things that break, my bike, electric scooter, whatever.
Thank you. Rebecca?
I believe that there's absolutely no stigma about seeing a mental health professional. That's why I see one. I have great health insurance, and I think everyone deserves health insurance that also covers mental health care, especially during this pandemic.
Thank you. Carrie?
Amen to that, Rebecca. I would say that the thing I'm doing right now to protect myself is reserving some time during the campaign. It's really busy. I reserve some time to cuddle with my kids, and we have movie night every week.
And Stephen?
I watched The Good Place and Schitt's Creek with my roommates on Netflix.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we're going to move into our last question that will be answered by all of our candidates. But this question, candidates will receive 1 minute to respond. So the question is, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused the shutdown of many businesses and has impacted the budgets at every level of government. What are your financial priorities with regards to recovering from the pandemic? And how will you ensure that Palo Alto emerges from this crisis in a strong economic state? The order of response will be Raven Malone, followed by Rebecca Eisenberg, and then Ed Lauling.
So I think that we should look into more sources of revenue, first off, just in case there is another wave or to develop a cushion for the next pandemic, however far along that may be. But a business tax that taxes larger businesses, primarily 50 employees or more, and that fluctuates based on the amount of employees that business has, so that it doesn't hurt the small businesses, and a business with 50 employees isn't paying the same amount as a business with 100. Also, a comprehensive marketing plan. It's really important that we encourage more business to not only our small businesses, but also our nonprofits that help recover our small businesses and that help recover our residents. We need to listen to what needs haven't been met or that we haven't been able to meet as far as our residents and our small businesses are concerned, and find bonds, find state and federal funding, different funding resources to help everyone get out of this financial hole. Thank you.
Thank you, Raven. Next up is Rebecca Eisenberg, followed by Ed Lauling and Greer Stone.
We need to do everything we can do to enact an emergency business tax like was done in other cities and is being done in other cities. Palo Alto is home to several of the largest companies that have been profiting a combined $300 billion off of the pandemic, which has harmed the vast majority of us financially. Every other city in the state of California has a business tax except for Palo Alto. We have to change that. Other direct means of raising revenue right now include increasing our fees on commercial developers. Commercial developers underpay for their impact on the city right now. We also need to relaunch our Office of Enforcement and Inspections, which maybe due to commercial developer pressure has been all but shut down. Inspections and enforcement creates hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue in other cities. And I think a lot of our commercial developers are not complying with the law. With that money, we invest in small businesses and in families. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Next up is Ed Lauling, followed by Greer Stone and Pat Burke.
Yes, it's terrible, but we have to keep a little bit of hope in mind here. We're gonna get a vaccine. So this isn't going to go on 5 years, but it's not going to go on 3 months like we hoped before. So we have to kind of have that time frame. We already mentioned, a couple of us earlier, that a long-term strategic plan for the economic situation of our city, particularly downtowns, is sort of top of the list. At the same time, we don't want to be slashing all of our services, and we are hopeful that things like Stanford Mall will start bringing some tax revenue back in here. We have to continue to be optimizing for the people as opposed to for the buildings. So if we have to keep pushing out capital improvement projects that cost a lot of money, like the safety building, et cetera, then that's what we've got to do, because we still have to live here and enjoy it. So that has to be prioritized. I do think, although it sounds contradictory, I agree that we have to go ahead with the, not today, but in 6 months, with the business on the, not the retailers, but the big businesses who also benefit from the retailers. It's time to do that.
Thank you so much, Ed. Next up is Greer Stone, followed by Pat Burke, followed by Greg Tanaka.
Yeah, Ed and I are pretty aligned on this, and I know Pat is as well. So you might get bored with the three of us talking about the same type of issues, but it's good. It's important to have this collaboration when we're on council to make these important decisions. I was really frustrated I was very frustrated back in the spring when council was looking at their, they had to cut over $40 million from their budget, and they immediately started going after these essential services that we all rely on as residents of this community, and so many of you rely on to be able to enjoy your youth. And especially when the school districts were shut down, there was almost nothing for you to be able to enjoy your time here in Palo Alto. That was a big shame. So I would always put people first over these capital improvement projects like Ed talked about. We can delay the building of the public safety building that's going to cost over $40 million until after this pandemic ends. And then again, talking about that economic development manager, making sure that we are strengthening our income sources. So in the future, if we have a similar problem like this, our city is not going to be in such a dire situation as we found ourselves in the spring.
Thank you so much, Greer. Next up is Pat Burt, followed by Greg Tanaka, followed by Carrie Templeton.
So yes, I agree with Ed and Greer and others. In the late spring, I led a number of community leaders in trying to oppose the city staff proposal to severely slash our services and put the needs of people second, and instead plow forward with an all-time record capital budget, twice the size of what we've ever had. Just to clarify, it's not a $40 million public safety building. It's estimated as a $110 million public safety building. Now, the council deferred the business tax, and under state law, we can't put that tax back on until 2022. It has to be on a general election ballot. So in the meantime, what we need to do is slow down the pace of this huge capital budget this year and next year. And in doing so, we'll be able to rebid a lot of those projects at far lower costs and divert those funds toward serving people and new needs that we have of supporting businesses and youth and other community needs, those who are really being harmed by the downturn.
Thank you so much, Pat. Next up is Greg Tanaka, followed by Carrie Templeton, followed by Stephen Lee.
I think this is a question of the day. So this is a really, really good question. The first step is we need to solve the public health crisis. That's with more testing, contact tracing, all that kind of stuff. I think one thing that a lot of people don't think about, and I think about it as a small business owner, is that a lot of businesses in our city are struggling. I talk to a lot of them every single Sunday during my office hours. They're on life support. We're having the worst economic situation since the Great Depression. I don't know if people even realize that. So there's an illusion that we have these incredibly profitable large companies in our city like Google, Facebook, Apple, but they're not in our city. They're in other cities. And the projection for the financial recovery is that it's going to take at least 2 to 4 years. The boom cycle we've had, until March may not return for a long time, maybe not even our lifetime. So I don't think when there are people unemployed, when people have taken pay cuts, I know a lot of families struggling to live here. I don't think we want to drive out their source of income and employment. We need to streamline the red tape for these small businesses. This is one of the reasons why I have the most number of endorsements of small businesses. We also need to have sensible spending. We don't want to be spending $1 million for utility graphics. I was the only council member to fight for that because we want to make sure that our money is well spent. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Carrie Templeton, followed by Stephen Lee, followed by Ajit Varma.
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree. It's very important to have our mental and physical well-being of our residents and workers handled first. That said, I'm concerned about the small businesses. They are leaving. They are failing. We have residents leaving because of the loss of their employment, and we're seeing town and country have record vacancy rates. We don't want to end up a ghost town. We need to take care that we have some stability in our small businesses, our retail storefronts, and our housing for people until the pandemic is over. So I think that we need to look everywhere. We do need to look for grants. We do need to lobby our state and national leaders to get us the financial relief that we need in our city, right? So we need to find ways to make it happen. And that's really going to involve a lot of coordination because we're not the only community that's dealing with this. And I think we can see that there is a larger need throughout the country.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Next up is Stephen Lee, followed by Ajit Varma.
So we need to approach this from both a revenue and expenditure side. I would be a strong ally to Greg Tanaka. I don't think our council should be rubber stamping $1 million contracts without even discussing them. So that's the first thing that I would stop, is approving multi-million-dollar contracts without even discussing them. We also need to stand up to staff and insist that they allow the council to reevaluate our capital improvement budget so that we can spend less on buildings and more on people. That wouldn't have happened if we had council members who were bold enough and willing enough to stand up and push the agenda that our residents want, as opposed to being afraid to ruffle feathers or being afraid of stepping on toes. So we need bold leadership to get serious about the expenditure side of things. On the revenue side, we need to get serious about a business tax now. I would call a special election so that we could put in place a business tax on large businesses who are making a lot of money right now and who are not paying their fair share at any level of government, whether it's federal, state, and local. While we're asking small businesses and families to do more with less, why wouldn't we ask profitable businesses to step up and do their fair share?
Thank you so much, Stephen. Next up, Ajit Varma.
So first of all, there's going to be a revenue shortfall. So it's really important for us to cut expenses where we can, make sure that there's efficiencies. I also believe that we should have a strong focus on increasing our revenue base. And that's by attracting more businesses to come to Palo Alto, building buildings, having impact fees, paying more property taxes, more sales taxes. But I would echo Greg is I think that there's a really strong misconception on who are the businesses in Palo Alto. These very profitable businesses like Google, Facebook, Tesla, they're gone. They left. We messed that up and it was a big mistake for us. I'll tell you the top employers in Palo Alto today. Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Stanford Healthcare, Stanford University, Varian Medical Systems, Palo Alto Medical Foundation. These are the top employers. They're not these really rich companies that we keep talking about that we assume are in Palo Alto. These are great healthcare companies. These are great hospitals that I don't think we should be taxing. So I'm just surprised at how many people want to tax these businesses. And I think it's important for us to recognize the businesses that are actually in Palo Alto today.
Thank you so much, Ajit.
All right, so now we're going to transition back into the group questions. So our first question for Group A is, what is your transportation plan for Palo Alto, and how do you plan to work with other council members, commissioners, and staff to achieve those goals? Order of response goes Stephen Lee, followed by Carrie Templeton, Pat Burke, Greg Tanaka, and Rebecca Eisenberg.
Yeah, so we need to get serious about transportation because it's impacting our ability to meet our climate change goals. So, one huge component of that is actually housing. We need to build housing near where the jobs are. We need to address our 3-to-1 jobs to housing imbalance. We also need to stop subsidizing vehicular travel. We just need to stop it. In order to address climate change, we're going to need to make tough and uncomfortable decisions. And unfortunately, that's the uncomfortable choice that we need to make moving forward. If my generation, millennials, your generation as Zoomers are going to inherit a world that's actually livable, we need to stop subsidizing, stop planning around vehicular travel, prioritize green transportation options, actually make it safe for people to bike and walk around our community. I've spoken to a lot of young people who don't feel safe doing either one of these things. And so we need to focus on those options and plan accordingly. And this is one of the reasons why I've been endorsed by Carbon Free Palo Alto and the League of Conservation Voters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Next up is Carrie Templeton.
Hi, thank you. I'm so glad we had a transportation question in here. So my vision for transportation is probably not going to fit in 1 minute. So I'm going to focus on the vision for transportation for students. And this is something I'm hopeful that when we do bring back the shuttle, which will happen someday, that we can find ways to do this that expands the reach beyond our one route. And this might mean partnering with other transit services, including private ones like the Marguerite, to potentially expand free service in Palo Alto. But if regardless of how that goes, I'm thinking about how can we get students to take public transit more and get used to this and make it a lifelong habit. And so one of the things I was thinking about is, can we work with the VTA to incentivize students in the north part of the county to use the service? And right now they've been reducing their service because they don't have the ridership. But I think if we get students and seniors, we'll be able to increase it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Pat Burke.
So the transportation solution has to be a multimodal solution. One of the things that we did was establish what's called a Transportation Management Association for the greater downtown area. And what it did was subsidize for lower income workers transit passes and rideshare apps and other mechanisms to enable them to be able to use transit. And I was also have been at the center of the electrification of Caltrain and the funding for the grade separations. But locally, we need to expand multimodal micromobility. So expanded bike system, which my wife and I bike everywhere in town, but also new emerging technologies, not only scooters, but everything in between that is the next generation of local micro transit. We also need to be thinking forward on emerging technologies. There's a whole sector called personal rapid transit that is less expensive and more efficient and faster than the transit systems that we've had, like trains and light rail, and we need to embrace that going forward.
Thank you so much, Pat. Next up is Greg Tanaka, followed by Rebecca Eisenberg.
So greenhouse gas is 65%, it consists mainly of transportation, which is about 65% of the greenhouse gas. So transportation is definitely a big concern. So there's several parts of the solution. One is kind of micro-mobility during scooter shares, which I promoted, protected bike lanes, which is essential because there's a lot of people who still don't bike because they don't feel safe. So that's really essential. And then also partnering with transportation providers like Uber and Lyft and others. So downtown Las Vegas has a program where you could take a free Uber or Lyft to downtown, and that's free. And then your way back, you have to pay for yourself. I also practice what I preach. So I'm the only council member that actually regularly bikes or scoots or skateboards to council meetings when we actually had them at City Hall. And you know, I could literally go to New York on my skateboard. I ride to the airport on my electric skateboard and then ride around Manhattan. The other big piece of this is transit. So VTA is dominated by San Jose. We need to get more service here in our city versus down in the San Jose area. And this problem really needs to be solved regionally. This is one of the reasons why I have one of the largest number of endorsements from local elected officials. I'm also endorsed by the League of Conservation Voters. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And next up is Rebecca.
So, electric shuttles. As we all know, our current and previous city councils have failed us entirely by failing to provide us with electric shuttles. So I propose a couple things. One is we can ask Tesla, which is headquarters here and employs thousands of people here, to maybe provide some Tesla branded electric shuttles, including some of our largest employers who do have offices in Palo Alto, including Google Nest, Facebook Oculus, and Amazon Web Services, which employ a combined 4,000 people here in Palo Alto, also should be providing electric shuttles and should be requiring their employees to park near 101 or 280 and bring them into the city with those shuttles. Also, like others said, we need protected bike lanes, pedestrian bridges, and I really vote for putting the train underground, which will make a much safer experience for everyone. As to how to do that, well, Tesla also has a company called the Boring Company with a huge drill to make big tunnels underground. Let's talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. So this next question will be the last question of the night, and it will be directed toward Group B. According to a Verde magazine study conducted of 290 Palo Alto High School students in September, climate change and environmental sustainability should be the City Council's top priority for 2021. What is your specific plan for climate action in Palo Alto, and will it include a market-based approach? The order of response will be as followed: Ed Lauling, Raven Malone, Greer Stone, and Ajit Varma.
Okay, thank you. I was expecting more questions on this because I expected this to be the top issue for younger people, because we don't have as much time as you do. So it's that crucial that you're interested in that. I would have to rate this one as equal to the crisis in affordable housing, which I'll comment on a little bit later. But the specifics are that we have to reduce the greenhouse gases, no question about it. And the last two things that we can do on that to make big dents are either get into electric vehicles, or at least out of combustion engine vehicles, and use more electricity instead of gas. There are a lot of environmental things that can be done, we don't have time to talk about, but the sustainability has to come from those two areas, and we should focus on that. There's ways to incent people to do it, to rehab their situations, and just basically be electric.
Thank you so much, Ed. Next up is Raven Malone, followed by Greer Stone.
Hi, I actually got endorsed by Verde magazine, Sunrise, and Carbon Free Palo Alto. So we have to create more affordable housing for our working class who work here in Palo Alto, especially our essential workers, our seniors, our first responders. None of our first responders work here. Most of our teachers don't live here. Most of our teachers don't live here. So it's important that we create housing that they can afford so that they can move here, because most of our environment is full of the emissions from transportation. We also need to create better public transportation, better green public transportation. So shuttles, more stops, more routes, light rails, as well as dense housing, focusing on infill to prevent our urban sprawl, as well as protected bike lanes or protected bike infrastructure that allows for safer bicycling. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raven. Next up is Greer Stone, followed by Ajit Varma.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for sure, climate change is the greatest existential threat that we're all facing, especially your generation. I take this issue very seriously. I grew up the son of a Yosemite Park ranger. I'm endorsed by the Sierra Club, and it's one of the big reasons why I have a youth advisory committee for my campaign. And this is one of the big reasons why so many students have joined my campaign to help out, is my focus on issues of climate change. I agree with Ed. The two big issues in this city is climate change and affordable housing. Unfortunately, only about 25% of the employed Palo Alto residents actually work in Palo Alto. So housing is important, but it's not going to solve our climate change issues. Telecommuting is one of the great ways in which we can do it, extending telecommuting when this pandemic ends. During the height of a 7-week span of shelter in place, greenhouse gas emissions were reduced by 32% in the Bay Area. This is a great tool that we need to be able to continue to reduce the reliance on single occupancy vehicle use. In addition, we need to move to electrification for all new buildings and really protect and expand our tree canopy, because the sequestration effect of trees in our community on the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions is a critical tool in using that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greer. Next up is Ajit Varma.
So 2/3 of the greenhouse gases are related to transportation. 1/3 is related to natural gas. So I think we should do things in both these areas. So for transportation, I'm a big advocate of biking and walking, which requires more density. So I think we should have density mixed use so that people don't have to live far from their employers. Things like bike lanes, I think one of the biggest issues is safety for biking around the city. There's a lot of dangerous intersections that we haven't addressed. So I think it's critical that we improve those intersections. In terms of natural gas, things like water heaters and gas grills are some of the main uses of natural gas. And for things like new buildings, and encouragement and incentives to replace those with more energy efficient and clean electrical water heaters. So I think that's important. In addition to reducing emissions, I think it's important to look beyond just greenhouse gases and provide things like trees, more greenery that provides a sink to greenhouse gases, and also look at encouraging reduction in meat consumption as well.
Thank you so much, Ajit. Now we'd like to give all of the candidates 30 seconds to make their closing statements and to tell you why you should vote for them. The order of these closing statements will be as follows: Greg Tanaka, followed by Pat Burt, Ed Lauling, Stephen Lee, Ajit Varma, Greer Stone, Rebecca Eisenberg, Carrie Templeton, and Raven Malone. Greg, take it away.
Palo Alto faces several unprecedented and interlocking challenges, most notably a public health emergency that is driving an economic crisis. Meeting these challenges while preserving our quality of life and keeping Palo Alto vibrant and safe requires vigilant, sensible spending and a recovery plan. I have the skills and experience to help the city with all three. That's why I have over 350 endorsements, which is double the number versus the next closest candidate, as well as the broadest set of endorsements. I will make City Hall work for you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greer. Next up is Pat Burt, followed by Ed Lauling.
I'd like to return to the issue of climate change. I led the city's adoption as a global leader in 100% carbon neutral electricity, represented the city at the Paris Climate Accords, and then led our Sustainability and Climate Action Plan to have an 80% reduction in our greenhouse gases by 2030. But the city has fallen behind on that in the last 4 years. We need to take charge of this as the greatest threat to our future. Few people thought that we could harness the resources that we have to address the COVID emergency. If we pivot and have a similar focus on climate change, we can do it.
Thank you so much, Pat. Next up is Ed Lauling, followed by Stephen Lee.
I've been working to uphold Palo Alto values in my community service and improve this town for over 2 decades. From helping homeless people get the services that they need, to the environment, to housing. And this mission is really my core driver as a human being, especially as it relates to creating more economic and ethnic diversity in our town. To be blunt, we need more Black and brown neighbors in our town. So I'm proven, I have a lot of experience. I can help create a more effective council that will implement values for all of our citizens. And I have a string of endorsements. The one that I will mention is that I'm one of 2 candidates that have been endorsed by all 3 local papers. I'm motivated, ready to get to work. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. Next up is Stephen Lee, followed by Ajit Varma.
This year, we have an opportunity to change not only the trajectory of our country for the better, but the trajectory of our community. If you're frustrated with the lack of progress on all of the issues you care about as a community, it's time to vote for change. It's time to vote for Democrats up and down the ballot. It's time for bold, progressive, and responsive leaders, folks who are just as bold as you, just as responsive and just as progressive, who hold the same values as this group. So I hope you vote for change. I hope you vote for me, one of only 3 candidates actually endorsed by the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Next up is Ajit Varma, followed by Greer Stone.
So I think this election is very important, and the decisions that local leaders make are very important to Palo Alto. So for me, the biggest thing I want to do is make sure that everyone in Palo Alto has opportunities in the future, and making sure that they can start a family, find the job that they want, and even retire in Palo Alto. So a lot of the issues that we've seen, we haven't solved, like our housing issues. And I want to make sure that we solve that in the next 4 years. So check out my website, ajitvarma.org, and feel free to send me any questions you have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ajit. Next up is Greer Stone, followed by Rebecca Eisenberg.
Thanks, Rachel. My experience growing up in this community, coupled with my 8 years of public service dedicated to this city, especially as a social justice advocate, has provided me with an understanding of the diverse set of interests in Palo Alto. It might be cliche to say, but you truly are our future. And I really can't imagine a brighter future than having it in the hands of a generation that is so enlightened and engaged. As the late notorious RBG said, fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Now go out there, fight passionately for what you believe in, and I know you're gonna really make us all proud. And if you want to learn more about my campaign, please visit my website at greerstone.com. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Greer. Next up is Rebecca Eisenberg, followed by Carrie Templeton.
It's time for fresh blood on the city council. For decades, current and previous council members have created the very problems that some of them are now vowing to solve. If they couldn't get anything done in 4 years or 16 years, they don't deserve more chances. I provide an alternative. I have a history of entrepreneurship. I'm a seasoned lawyer. I have a record of negotiating great outcomes, including creating housing for 500 customer service agents while serving as senior counsel at PayPal. I understand the needs of young people because I live with 2 of them, and my campaign is managed by a 20-year-old with assistance of a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, and 23-year-old. I know our future depends on Generation Z, and I promise you that I will do everything I can to empower Generation Z. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Next up is Carrie Templeton, followed by Raven Malone.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for this opportunity to speak with you and answer your questions. I also am available with by email or text. The number and address are on my website, carrieforcouncil.com. I'm running to make the promise of Palo Alto available to everyone in our community. And I say that every time because I want you guys to know that's a goal that we should focus on. We don't currently have equal opportunities in Palo Alto, and we should address that. And I will address that. Is that timer ended already? If that's the case, I'll stop now. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Next up is Raven Malone.
Thank you so much, Vote 16, for having me. I want to create a better infrastructure for our future, advocate for housing as a human right, and reimagine community safety. You should vote for me because I'll bring a fresh perspective, innovative ideas, and more importantly, I will listen to your concerns, bring your voices to the table, and work hard to make sure that we're not still only talking about problems, but also finding solutions. If you want information on me and my campaign, please visit ravenmalone.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to all our candidates for coming tonight. We'd also like to extend our sincerest thank yous to the 80+ students who took the time to submit their questions for this forum. And if you submitted a question and were not able to hear candidates address the topic, we really encourage you to contact the candidates directly to ask them your questions.
Thank you again, everyone. I hope you all have a good night.
Nicely done.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Antonia. Thanks, Rachel. Good seeing you again.
Emily, is it? I think. Can you make
Thanks
sure?
so much.
Thank you so much. Is it still streaming?
Yeah, it's still streaming. Emily, can you please, or is it Emily, or I might have the name totally wrong. Whoever's
I'm trying to, just give me a second.
All right. Well, the 25 attendees in the meeting right now are just gonna be like,
I'm trying to make it, actually, Cody, do you think you could do it on your end since you're I'm gonna stop the live stream. Okay.
I'm not recording. I think that might be. Oh wait. Yeah.
I paused everything. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Okay. Do you think you can? I just sent you a text with emails. If you can share it with me, that way I can get it loaded onto